listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shemaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shemaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again, and today, man, we have another show lined up for y'all. Today, we have award-winning health expert, Nicole Kerr, and she is a co-author of Eating the Rainbow, Lifelong Nutritional Wellness, and she also has been featured on many major platforms. But today, we're going to be talking about her recent book, You Are Deathless, a near-death experience that taught her how to fully live life and not fear death. Man, first and foremost, I want to say thank you to you, Nicole, for being on today. How you doing?
I'm doing really good today, and happy spring equinox to you. Doesn't feel like spring in North Carolina, though. It's still really cold here.
Yeah, they're in Cali, man, and they got a little snow going. So, man, once again, I kind of teased the intro, and you have a very impressive resume, by the way.
Thank you.
And with that said, could you just share with the audience a little bit about yourself and all the great things that you've done that led you to this book?
Okay, I'd be happy to do that. I grew up in the deep South, Jackson, Mississippi. So if you know anything about the South, it's entrenched, it's the Bible Belt, right? So religion is a fundamental cornerstone of growing up. And so I grew up Southern Baptist and Lutheran. So I got a really heaping dose of religion because we were at church a lot between those two organizations. And then I followed my dad's footsteps because I'm a recovering people pleaser. And someone else may identify with that, where you just want to make people feel good all the time. And it's an identity that wound up killing me, actually, a couple of times. And I decided, there are 4 kids in my family, but I decided I wanted to be my daddy's girl. And the way to make that impression for me back then was to go to the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs and become a cadet. They had just started admitting women 6 years before. And so I was stunned that I got accepted because I didn't have, even though my dad was in the military, I didn't grow up wanting to be that, or, was interested in planes or playing war or anything like that. I was a model. I was the head of a team board. I was doing junior achievement. I was like a drill team, like the Rockettes, not the rifle kind in the Army. So, I did it to please him. And when I went to Colorado and I went into boot camp, I knew immediately that my soul was in the wrong place. And I can appreciate our military for what it does to protect and defend, but I was there for the wrong reasons. And anytime your soul is somewhere for the wrong reason, or you don't listen to that intuition inside of you, it generally does not work out well. And I knew by the 3rd week of basic cadet training, when I had a panic attack because they allowed us to call home, I cried for 3 minutes. I didn't even say one word to my mother. She got on the phone, she said hello, and it was just like hyperventilating and crying. And I didn't realize until much, much later that that was a panic attack. And what I really needed was permission to quit and to come home. And I needed it from my dad and my mother, and I didn't get it. My mother later said to my dad, "What have we done to her?" And he said, "Oh, she'll be fine." Well, let me tell you, I was anything but fine. I went from there to remedial. I was like, do you remember the movie Private Benjamin?
I've heard of it. I didn't see it, though.
Okay. Well, it is Goldie Hawn going into the Army, and she doesn't fit. And it's kind of like, that's me. So I couldn't bring myself to quit. I couldn't deal with the shame of failure. So I went on and made it through the first year. The beginning of the second year was when the automobile crash happened, where I was pronounced dead at the scene. It was a squadron event. I was getting a ride back with a senior. They had been drinking all day, and he wanted to stop and have some more beer and had an agenda to try to make out with me, which I wasn't aware of because I never dated. So here I'm at school with 4,000 guys, and my dad's rules are no smoking, no drinking, and no dating upperclassmen. So needless to say, we were the last to leave the event and never made it back to the Air Force Academy. I remember leaving he wanted to pull over and watch the Rocky Mountain view of the sunset, which I felt was a little bit strange. But then when he started to try to make out with me, I realized, oh boy, he's got a whole different agenda. And he was drunk, and he pulled back on the road. And that's when my memory went blank. And I woke up in the ICU of Penrose Community Hospital. Now, that gap was filled in by medical records, by interviews with my paramedic, by my head surgeon, by my nurse that I had been with. I was in the hospital for 4 months. And then my memory came back, get this, 19 years later. The only memory I had was bright white lights. And I asked my surgeon, I said, all I remember are these just bright white clear lights. And I said, was that the operating room lights that maybe I woke up? And she said, absolutely not. She goes, you were unconscious. You came in. They initially thought you were dead. You actually were dead at the scene. They had some bystanders at the area because it was kind of an open park area in Monument, Colorado. And they called in the 911 and tried to get a pulse on me and couldn't get any kind of vitals. So when the first volunteer fire department got there, the EMT that they covered me up with a blanket. He took the blanket off and said he could not get any vitals. So he tried one measure that was a sternal knuckle press. And I don't know if you're familiar with that in a medical terminology, but it's designed to elicit pain. And when he did that, the only thing that he could get out of my body was my right pupil flickered and the pupil dilated. So at that moment, my soul, which had already flown out of my body when I went into the air from the crash, it came back into my body through my eye. And you may have heard this expression, your eyes are the window to your soul. Have you ever heard that?
Oh, yeah. I heard that before.
Yeah. So that's what mine came in through that eye. And at that point, he was able to get a blood pressure on me of 60/0. Now, that's still almost dead, but at least I was alive. And his biggest fear was he couldn't keep me alive. I had multiple injuries. Amputated my left foot. I broke my pelvis in two. I severed my right wrist. I had just lots of stuff happening to me. So I got to the nearest community hospital, and that night they were just trying to stabilize me. And by the grace of God, I got stable, and then was in ICU for 7 weeks and 4 months in the hospital, and then 8 months in rehab. So refocusing my life, that did it for me. And I will tell you that when I remembered what happened on the other side, I did not want to come back. And this is what they call a near-death experience. Some people will disassociate, and they will come out of their bodies. That's called an out-of-body experience. But a near-death experience means that you were pronounced dead and that you come back from that. And it is something that hundreds of thousands of people have experienced. Many don't remember it. And I can't tell you exactly why 19 years later I remembered. I was working at the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, did my usual Starbucks run, and I got in the car and I remembered exactly how I was sitting in the car. One foot, it was a Corvette convertible, 1965, so no seatbelts. My right foot was on the dashboard and my left foot was crossed over my right foot. So it had like a triangle. And I remembered, I started remembering, it's called repressed memories. So instead of going to work, I went to my chiropractor who did body healing, and he fit me in his schedule, and he said, Nicole, these are repressed memories. And I'm like, well, why the hell are they coming back now, 19 years later? And he said, because your body finally feels safe enough and you have support to actually deal with this because it was so horrific. And I think that's important for people to hear if they've been in situations where they have had a near-death experience or trauma and they can't remember. The body keeps the score. It is an amazing book on trauma by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. And it's kind of like the Bible of trauma, but your body will hold those memories until it feels safe enough for you to release them. And when you release them, you are going to need support. So if you're in an environment that doesn't have any support, it's going to be very hard for you to navigate dealing with it because it will just, trauma is very present in our society right now. It's causing a lot of people, depression, anxiety, PTSD, trauma. All of that is really high on people's radar right now. And to get help with it is the most important thing that you can do because you have to heal these trauma wounds in order to move on and align and increase your vibration. And if your parents never dealt with their traumas, they are literally passing on we got through it, so, we're fine. You don't need help. And that's just not true. My mother had told the doctor that Jesus and God were my psychiatrist and psychologist, and I didn't need mental health counseling. And she was wrong. Jesus didn't appear to me and sit down and counsel with me. And I wound up having a eating disorder, compulsive eating, as a result of not dealing with the pain. I hated the way my body looked because it was so, disfigured. And I had no control over it. So, your body will adapt, but it's usually in a negative way to the trauma. And it took me from age 20 to 40 to actually release the eating disorder. So other people manifest in other ways, but it's your body will figure out a way to deal with it if you don't.
And with all that said, I want to get away, say thank you for your service. And when you look back and writing this book, you're sharing your journey and your story, your experience. If you had the reader take one thing away from this book, what do you hope that they learn from this experience? Because I know you mentioned faith and how important God is. What do you hope that people will be able to appreciate and understand after reading your book?
There's three things. First of all, the concept of the God that I was raised with was not completely true. I was taught that God was loving and caring and would be there for you. And then on the other hand, it was a duality. He would bring the wrath of God on you if you screwed up or didn't obey the rules. He was judgmental and he was critical. None of those negative things exist where we are going. God is love, period. Love is the source. Love is all that matters and is the source of all that exists. Okay. The other thing, which is the title of my book, is we don't die. Yes, our physical body does decay, but when we die, our energy body splits open and our soul is released. That last breath leaves us and moves forward and goes back to the other side. And you're not alone. You're going to be greeted with your deceased loved ones, deceased pets. The angels will escort you over to the other side. So even though you may not have a human present there with you as you pass, there are angelic beings that are doing that. Third, do not fear death was the message that I was given on the other side, that if you are in fear, it's a low vibration and it's going to keep you from living your life. And to ask the angels for help. They are there for us, but we have to ask because of free will. So don't start developing a relationship with the angelic realm, and your beliefs about God shape your relationship with death.
Man, that's an interesting point right there. And I like that. When you see how you live your life today. I mean, like I said, you've been on some major platforms sharing your story and helping people. I would say help people deal with maybe their own trauma, their own setbacks. How do you see the opportunity that people can use your story as inspiration for themselves? I guess you can say unlock their potential to live their life the best way they can.
Yeah, I give people several tools, and most of the time with trauma, you're going to need someone to help you through that. There are a lot of new techniques and tools, neuro-emotional technique, EMDR, all these different things that are getting at the subconscious where the belief system that is sabotaging you is housed. And if you don't deal with your emotions at the appropriate time of an incident, they will stay in your body until you come across a set of conditions later in your life that trigger it, and you're going to go right back to how you didn't deal with it at age 6 or 20 or 40, and you're going to repeat that. And that's how you wind up sabotaging yourself from what you really want. So you have to get at these different modalities that get at the unconscious and not the conscious, because we're only operating with between 1% and 5% consciousness. So I talk about different modalities that have helped me, but there's a ton out there. So start looking into them. And the other piece that I want people to understand is when I had my crash, among other things, parts of my soul left me. And this is known as soul loss. Now, growing up in Mississippi, all I knew was soul food, soul music, and my soul was going to hell if I was a bad girl. But I didn't understand what my soul really was. And I'm not sure a lot of people do. But soul loss, when you go through trauma, your body can do this. And one of the first symptoms is you don't want to be here. And I did not want to come back. When I went over to the other side, okay, an angel came down when I went through the windshield. And when I was midstream in the air, that angel, who later turned out to be my grandfather on my dad's side at age early 30s, he came down, took me back up to another space. And that's where we had this conversation. It was not in English. I don't know what it was because I was not in my body. I could see my body in the ditch on the ground, rather my corpse, because there was no life in it. And this was all preceding when the ambulances and fire department and all that came over. This is while I was under the blanket and gone. And I will tell you that I knew when I got back in that body, when they told me I was coming back, I was going to have a life of pain and suffering, because I was basically going back to infancy, because I couldn't walk. I couldn't go to the bathroom. I mean, I had 2 more code blues while I was in the hospital, 6 major operations, 64 pints of blood. I mean, that's like redoing your system 8 times. I tried to go back a couple of times, but I have an angel here that was like, nope, you are staying and you're getting this book out and you're going to help people not fear death, because there is nothing to fear. I mean, in most books that are written about death, think about it. It is cloaked in a veil of gloom and doom, and it has this cloud of depression and negativity around it throughout our culture and society. But my own experience, and like I said, hundreds of thousands of others, is 100% different. Death is absolute beauty, light, and loving kindness on the other side. And we're all energy. That soul that leaves us, that is your breath. That is energy. God is energy. We are all energy, and everything and everyone is connected. The second thing on soul loss, you have this low-level consistent feeling that something is missing in your life. It's kind of like you're at this low-grade depression. And that's also interesting to note. Compulsive behaviors or addictions can fall into this statement. And for me now, I can see the link between my compulsive eating and my feeling of emptiness and not wanting to be alive, because I no longer believed in God after the accident. I my parents blamed me, so I lost the love and support of my family. And third, my body was now totally mangled. What kind of life is worth living now? But yet I was this miracle, so I couldn't leave because I'm a miracle now. But how was I gonna make sense of all of this, And then the third symptom of soul loss is you just can't get over it. And this can lead to feeling stuck with chronic health conditions. You're hyper vigilant above all of keeping yourself safe. So that soul part left me as a means of self-protection. So I had to work in 2019 with a shaman to help retrieve those soul parts, because I was walking around just wide open for things to happen to me because I had had so much loss in that area. So soul retrieval is a powerful healing tool that works. So I want people to know that you're dealing here in the spiritual hidden realm, and it's a very real thing. And I think sometimes we don't even know that it's available.
Once again, you listen on Refocus Radio, talking to our guest for today, Nicole Kerr. You can get her book that we're talking about, You Are Deathless, a near-death experience, taught me how to fully live and not fear death. And while we still have you on for a few more minutes, when you look back and you see how far you came since from that situation, and you see how you were able to write a book to help people, and you mentioned faith throughout the interview, how has your relationship with God, how has it been different since your experience?
I had to reconceptualize God. I had to let what I call vending machine concept of God, where you put in the behavior and you get the reward. That's the way I thought God operated. That if you asked God in prayer and you were earnest and you were a good person, then you would get what you prayed for. And that's not how it works at all, because God is not, in my opinion, this persona. God is love. God is energy, and we have free will. So my concept is constantly evolving around that. But I have a little 6-year-old girl that I worked with, and her definition fits for me right now where I'm at, but we all are on our own journey to figure out what our own relationship is with God. But it should not include, in my opinion, fear. Fear should not be in it at all, because God is only love. But she told me, when she came from a fundamentalist church, and when I was talking to her, she was scared she was going to hell because she did something bad. And now this is an adopted little 6-year-old girl. And I said, well, tell me how you see God. And she eagerly told me, God is a blue spirit with colors and balloons and all different colors, no head, and can talk. Now, clearly, this little girl is still having a direct experience with God with no filters from other people involved. And to me, that is the best concept of God that I have come upon thus far in my life.
Man, that's awesome. Well, I want to say that again, thank you for your service. Thank you for writing the book and sharing that experience with our audience. What's the best call to action that you want to leave with our listeners? Because I know on your website, you have a blog and you have different resources that people can check out.
Get help if you're traumatized. And second of all, be able to define your concept of God. What do you really believe God is? Because like I said, that is going to shape your relationship with death. And if it involves fear, then I would tell you just take a second look and start exploring other options, because the generations that came before us, when you think about, well, God meant for it to be this way. And that doesn't answer the questions that we come up with and go, why did this happen to me? There was a book written a long time ago called Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People? And my book has been called the sequel to that. So I think, because I question that, I'm like, I'm a good person. I've never had any alcohol until this day. And the first day I have fun, man, I wind up dead, so it's been a journey for me. And I hope my book can inspire others and help those that are going through, either some person's transition, but ultimately we have to change the concept of death in our country and make it more positive, because it is what's going to happen to all of us. And we never know when it's going to happen. It's not something just for old people. And we're seeing that with mass shootings like Sandy Hook and things like that. So we have to prepare ourselves, both with the physical, the wills, power of attorney, all that, do that, but also get yourself into a place of alignment from a mind, body, spirit, emotional place.
Once again, you can go visit Nicole's website. It's NicoleKerr.com. And you can also get her book on Amazon, and also on her website. She has a spot for that as well. So once again, her website again is NicoleKerr.com. I want to say thank you once again for taking time talking to Refocus Radio.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. I hope it's been of help, and it will be available in Audible in about another month.